People like to say revenge is loud, explosive, violent. They imagine shouting matches and public confrontations. But the truth is, the most effective revenge is quiet. It smiles back at you, it nods politely, and it waits. 3 months ago, I lost everything in a single evening. My hair, my reputation, my sense of safety around people I once trusted with my life. Tonight, I'm sitting alone on my couch, absent-mindedly twirling the ends of my newly grown hair around my fingers while staring at an old photo on my phone. 5 of us, shoulder to shoulder, laughing into the summer sun. We looked unbreakable. We weren't. What still makes me smile is this. I didn't destroy them. They did that all on their own. I simply stepped out of the way. My name is Hannah Campbell. I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how a harmless tradition turned into something cruel, and how cruelty has consequences. Before everything unraveled, my life was small but steady. I lived in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood in a studio apartment that cost more than it should have and offered less than it promised. I worked as a marketing coordinator for a nonprofit. Long hours, low pay, but work that made me feel like I mattered. I didn't have much, but I had friends, or at least I thought I did. Every Saturday night for 7 years, the same 5 of us gathered at Jake Morrison's apartment, poker night. It started back in college with cheap beer and $5 buy-ins. Over time, as jobs replaced exams and adulthood crept in, the money mattered less. The bets didn't. Jake loved hosting. 31, tall, confident in that effortless way men in tech sales tend to be. He was the center of gravity in every room, the kind of guy who made decisions without asking and expected everyone else to fall in line. His apartment reflected that. Exposed brick, designer furniture, a poker table that cost more than my monthly rent. He liked to call it an investment in friendship. Megan Chen was impossible to miss. 28, always perfectly styled, always holding her phone at the exact right angle. Marketing consultant by day, aspiring influencer by night. If something happened and Megan didn't post it, she genuinely believed it hadn't happened at all. Her life was curated down to the minute. Sarah Williams balanced her out. 30, deep into a sociology PhD, sharp-tongued and analytical. She had a habit of turning casual conversations into mini lectures after a few drinks. She never called anyone stupid, but somehow always made you feel like you were catching up. Tyler Brooks was the youngest, at 27, a personal trainer with movie star genetics and impulse control issues. He loved sports betting, hated losing, and had a restless energy that made him entertaining and exhausting in equal measure. He'd picked up magic tricks a year earlier, cards, sleight of hand, little illusions he practiced obsessively. And then there was me. I was the reliable one, the baker, the birthday rememberer, the peacemaker. I brought homemade cookies to poker night and laughed when jokes crossed lines. I said yes when I wanted to say no. I believed being kind would protect me. Poker night had evolved. The cards were secondary. The real stakes were the bets. Loser buys drinks. Loser texts their ex. Loser wears something humiliating in public. It was always framed as harmless fun. And maybe at first it was. Until one Saturday in early March. Jake was shuffling the deck with a grin that lingered too long. I noticed it, but brushed the feeling aside. I always brushed things aside. "All right," he said, leaning back in his chair. "We've been boring lately. Time to do something memorable." Megan barely looked up from her phone. "If this involves food poisoning again, I'm not participating." Jake laughed. "Relax, this one's iconic." Sarah tilted her head. "Define iconic." "The loser shaves their head, completely bald, tonight, on live stream." The room froze. Someone laughed nervously. Maybe it was me. "That's extreme," Sarah said, though she was smiling. "Hair carries social meaning, identity." "Oh, please," Jake shot back. "It grows back. Nobody's losing a limb." Tyler's eyes lit up. "I'm in." Of course he was. Megan hesitated for half a second, then grinned. The views would be insane. One by one, they agreed. Then they all looked at me. I felt my chest tighten. I loved my hair. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Shoulder length, soft, familiar. I opened my mouth to object, but the moment passed. 4 pairs of eyes waited, expectant, judging. Sure, I heard myself say. Why not? The cards were dealt. Something felt wrong immediately, though I couldn't explain it. Tyler kept adjusting his position. Jake's hands moved too smoothly. Megan checked her phone like she was waiting for a cue. I lost steadily, not spectacularly, just enough to drain hope without raising suspicion. The final hand felt safe. 2 pairs. Relief washed through me, until Jake laid his cards down. Full house. He smiled like he'd just been handed a gift. Well, he said, standing, looks like we're doing this. I tried to laugh. Okay, tomorrow though. Let me mentally prepare. Nope, Jake said. Rules are rules. Megan's phone was already up. Guys, this is happening. My stomach dropped. Jake disappeared into his bedroom and came back holding professional clippers, still boxed. I noticed the receipt taped to the side. 2 weeks old. You just have those? I asked. Borrowed, he said too quickly. They moved fast after that. A chair dragged to the center of the room, phones out, lights on. Megan went live. Say hi, she chirped to her followers. Our friend Hannah's about to get a bold new look. The comment feed exploded. Laughing emojis, shocked reactions, people tagging friends. Sit, Jake said. I sat. The clippers roared to life. He didn't ease into it. He ran them straight down the middle of my head. Hair slid into my lap. The sound was unbearable. Oh my God, Megan screamed with laughter. She looks like a monk. Sarah laughed too. Historically, head shaving has been used as a no one cares, Tyler said, filming my face. She's crying. I was. Each pass took something with it. Not just hair, dignity, safety, trust. Don't be dramatic, Jake said. It's just hair. When it was over, he ran his hand over my scalp, checking for missed spots. Perfect, he announced. Human bowling ball. They laughed until they cried. Megan shoved her phone inches near my face. Say something. I saw myself on the screen. Pale, red-eyed, unrecognizable. I need to go, I whispered. I left with hair clinging to my clothes and laughter chasing me down the hallway. By the time I got home, the video was everywhere. And that was only the beginning. By the 3rd morning after that night, the shock had worn off and something colder took its place. Shock blurs, cold sharpens. I woke up early before the sun, instinctively reaching for my hair like I'd done every morning since I was 13. My hand met bare skin, smooth, wrong. I didn't cry this time. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly, listening to my own breathing and realizing something important. They hadn't shaved my head because I lost a game. They shaved my head because they wanted to. That thought stayed with me as I made coffee I didn't drink and sat on the edge of my bed wrapped in a hoodie, scrolling through my phone. The video had escaped containment. It wasn't just Megan's live stream anymore. It had been clipped, edited, reposted with captions that made it look even worse. Laugh tracks added, zoom-ins on my face timed to the exact moment my smile collapsed. Girl gets humbled by friends. Don't bet what you can't afford to lose. Main character energy gone wrong. Thousands of comments. People debating whether I deserved it. People arguing about whether it was abuse or just friends being savage. Some defending me, many not. Strangers dissecting my personality based on 60 seconds of humiliation. I closed the app and sat very still. This wasn't about embarrassment. This was about power. I didn't leave my apartment for 4 days. I told work I had the flu. Technically true. My body felt like it had been invaded by something toxic. My sister came over once, took one look at me and didn't ask questions. She just hugged me carefully, like I might break. They planned it, she said eventually, not asking. I think so. Then don't do anything yet, she said. People like that destroy themselves. You just have to stop protecting them. That sentence landed harder than anything else she said. Stop protecting them. Because that's what I'd been doing for years without realizing it, smoothing over their worst traits, laughing when something felt off, making excuses when lines were crossed, being the buffer between their impulses and real consequences. I had been the padding on their sharp edges. On the 5th day, I opened my laptop and stopped scrolling aimlessly. I started looking deliberately. Patterns emerge when you're no longer afraid of what you'll find. I started with the obvious one, the Clippers, high-end, professional, unopened box. No one borrows equipment like that. That alone meant forethought. Then I worked backward. Megan's social media activity. She deleted stories constantly, but deletion doesn't erase everything. I found cached previews, screenshots from people who repost everything. 2 weeks before poker night, she'd posted a boomerang at Jake's place. In the background, barely visible, were shopping bags from a beauty supply store. At the time, it meant nothing. Now, it felt loud. Then there was Sarah. Sarah loved to tweet half-formed academic thoughts after wine. She deleted most of them, but the internet has a long memory. I found a cached post from 3 weeks before the bet. Group humiliation as bonding ritual. Ethical gray zone. Fascinating. My chest tightened. Tyler was next. Tyler didn't think before he paid people. Venmo is honesty in public. I scrolled back and found a transaction from him to Jake 2 weeks before poker night. No note, $50. Then, the day after the incident, Jake sent him $150 back. No explanation, just money moving in a direction that didn't make sense unless something had gone according to plan. I wasn't spiraling, I was assembling. The final piece came without me looking for it. An unknown number texted me just after midnight. "You don't know me. I'm sorry. I have something you need to hear." I didn't reply at first. Then another message. "I was with Tyler. He talked a lot. I recorded it because it felt wrong. I didn't think he'd actually do it." The files came through seconds later. I listened, sitting on my bathroom floor, knees pulled to my chest. Tyler's voice, drunk and proud, explaining how easy it was to influence outcomes when people trusted you. Jake laughing, naming the plan like it was a joke between boys. Megan talking numbers, views, engagement. Sarah calmly discussing participant response. Participant. That was me. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't cry. I felt something settle into place. They hadn't seen me as a friend. They'd seen me as a variable. That realization did something irreversible. The next week wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about education. I learned how anonymity actually works. Not the movie version, the real one. How information moves, how tips are traced, how to speak without being heard. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't have to. They'd done enough on their own. Jake lived a life built on risk disguised as confidence. Megan monetized perception. Sarah believed intelligence insulated her from scrutiny. Tyler borrowed tomorrow to survive today. All I did was stop standing between them and gravity. 6 weeks after the night they shaved my head, I walked back into Jake's apartment. The wig helped, not because I wanted to hide, but because I wanted control over when I was seen. Human hair, perfect match, better styled than before. I wanted them unsure of what they were looking at. They weren't ready for me. Their reactions told me everything. Relief first, then discomfort, then fear. Fear is information. I didn't accuse, I didn't threaten, I just spoke with precision. Details no one had shared with me directly, knowledge I shouldn't have unless I'd been paying attention. People unravel when they realize you've been watching longer than you thought. I left early that night, let them sit with it. Then I waited. The unraveling never needs help once it starts. Jake's life collapsed because it was already unstable. All I did was remove the illusion of safety. Megan's brand imploded because it couldn't survive daylight. Sarah's academic identity cracked under scrutiny because it wasn't as original as she believed. Tyler's debts caught up because lies always compound.
They turned on each other first. That's how it always goes. Group chats filled with panic, accusations, paranoia. And me? I responded slowly, kindly, the same way I always had. That was the part that hurt them the most. 3 months later, we sat at a table that none of them could afford anymore. They apologized, all of them. Different words, same desperation. I accepted none of it, because apologies are meaningless when they're motivated by loss, not understanding. I told them the truth, finally, that I hadn't destroyed anything, that I'd simply stopped intervening, that kindness is not a moral obligation when it's used as a weapon against you. I walked away lighter than I'd felt in years, not because I'd won.
The collapse didn't happen all at once. It never does. It happened in layers, like paint peeling from a wall that everyone assumed was solid. And the strangest part was how little effort it took once I stepped out of the way. People think revenge is loud, explosive, confrontational. It isn't. Real revenge is administrative. It's paperwork. It's timing. It's understanding how systems work and knowing when to let them do what they're designed to do. I didn't orchestrate chaos. I removed insulation. Jake was the first to feel it, because Jake lived closest to the edge. He'd always been reckless, but charm had protected him. People forgave him because he smiled like consequences were optional. I knew his schedule better than he did. Tuesday lunches, Thursday late meetings, patterns disguised as ambition. When Amanda unexpectedly showed up at his office that Tuesday, I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I didn't tell Jake to lie. I didn't make him panic. I didn't force him to underestimate how fragile trust really is. All I did was allow coincidence to do what it always does when lies stack too high. By that evening, Jake was unraveling in the group chat. This makes no sense. Someone is messing with me. Everything's falling apart at once. No one responded the way he wanted. Megan sent emojis. Sarah offered detached analysis. Tyler asked if anyone could spot him cash. And me? I sent a single message. That sounds really hard. Let me know if you need anything. I meant it too. I just didn't specify what I was willing to give. The second domino fell quieter but faster. Amanda had built her life on visibility. Likes were oxygen. Without them, she suffocated. I'd watched her long enough to know the cracks. The charity fundraiser had bothered me even when it happened. Vague numbers, no receipts, no follow-ups. But I'd trusted her because that's what friends do. Now I trusted systems more. I didn't accuse her publicly. That would have been messy. Instead, I asked questions in the right places. Neutral ones, the kind professionals ask when something doesn't add up. Once doubt enters a brand narrative, it spreads faster than truth ever could. Sponsors don't wait for verdicts. They retreat at the first sign of smoke. Megan noticed within days. Has anyone else had brands go quiet? Is Instagram glitching for you? I think I'm being shadow banned. I watched her stories grow more defensive, less curated, more frantic. She talked about haters and jealous people. The internet has a reflexive allergy to influencers who can't take accountability. Comments shifted, screenshots multiplied, old posts resurfaced. She called me one night, voice shaking. "Do you think this is because of that video?" I paused before answering, long enough for her to feel it. "I think," I said gently, "people are starting to look more closely at everyone." She cried. I let her. Sarah lasted longer. Intellectual arrogance gives you a false sense of invincibility. She believed her work existed above scrutiny, protected by complexity. But academia is unforgiving when something smells off. I knew that. She didn't. When her advisor requested a meeting, she texted me immediately. Probably nothing, just procedural. But her messages grew shorter after that, then stopped altogether. Weeks later, she called from a number I didn't recognize. "They postponed my defense," she said flatly. "They're reviewing my sources." I said nothing. "You don't think?" She trailed off. I let silence do what words couldn't. Tyler was last because Tyler had always been running, from responsibility, from debt, from himself. His world didn't collapse, it closed in, quietly, persistently. He started missing poker nights, then gym sessions, then calls. When he did show up, his eyes were always moving, calculating exits. One night he texted me directly, "Can I borrow money?" I stared at the message longer than I needed to. "How much?" I asked. 5,000. I almost laughed. Almost. "I might be able to help a little," I replied. "Let me check." I didn't send money. Instead, I sent a request. $50. Accidental, I claimed. Then another the next day, and the next. It wasn't about the money, it was about pressure. The sense that someone was watching, expecting, waiting. Paranoia is exhausting when you've earned it. By the time they realized their lives were unraveling in sync, it was too late to trace anything. They turned on each other instead. That's the irony of group cruelty. Loyalty is shallow. Fear is not. The group chat became unreadable. Accusations, denials, bargaining. Jake was convinced Megan had tipped someone off. Megan thought Sarah was using them for research. Sarah believed Tyler had talked too much. Tyler suspected everyone. And me? I brought brownies when Jake asked. I sat on Amanda's couch and listened while she rehearsed apology videos she never posted. I replied to Sarah's late-night messages with academic articles and sympathetic emojis. I answered Tyler's calls and told him I believed in him. Kindness is terrifying when people expect retaliation. 3 months after the night that changed everything, I suggested dinner. Neutral territory. Expensive enough to feel serious, familiar enough to feel safe. They all came. They looked smaller. Life has a way of compressing people when it removes their illusions. Jake had lost weight. Amanda dressed down. Sarah avoided eye contact. Tyler flinched at sudden noises. They apologized, one by one. Different styles, same regret. I listened. When they finished, I spoke. I told them something they hadn't considered. That I didn't need revenge, that the worst thing I could do to them was stop intervening. For years, I'd softened consequences, redirected blame, provided emotional labor, smoothed narratives, covered gaps. I'd been the reason things didn't fall apart sooner. And once I stepped back, reality rushed in to fill the space. They didn't argue. They couldn't, because on some level, they knew it was true. I left before dessert. Outside, the city felt different, quieter, not because it had changed, but because I had. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt resolved. There's a difference. Weeks later, I ran into Sarah by accident. She looked older, tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. She asked me if I planned it all. I told her no. I told her the truth, that I'd simply stopped lying to myself about who they were. That the moment they shaved my head wasn't when they hurt me, it was when they revealed themselves. She nodded slowly. "We were cruel," she said. "Yes," I replied, and casual about it. She left without asking for forgiveness. That mattered more than an apology ever could. I went home that night and took off my wig. My hair was growing back unevenly, stubbornly, defiantly. I smiled at my reflection, not because I'd won, but because I'd survived without becoming what they were. And that was the part they'd never understand. The weeks that followed were almost anticlimactic in their perfection. I didn't need to chase them. I didn't need elaborate schemes or public shaming. Life, as it turns out, is excellent at delivering consequences when you remove the cushions of friendship, trust, and secrecy. My former friends, the ones who had once laughed at my bald head, were busy unraveling in the quiet, private ways that real embarrassment tends to take shape. And I watched, not with glee, but with a cold sense of inevitability. Jake Morrison was first. The irony wasn't lost on me that the man who prided himself on control and charm now faced chaos at every turn. He had spent years weaving a life that looked impressive on paper, promotions, luxury apartments, an engaged fiancé. But underneath, his foundations were riddled with cracks. It started small, Amanda began asking questions, not accusatory, just factual. Did Jake really need to be in the office that often? Why did he seem so distracted at dinner? And Jake, who had always been too confident, too quick to charm, hesitated. He lied. He made excuses. And in those hesitations, the first seeds of doubt were planted. Within days, a single misstep became a cascade. Amanda, armed with the one truth Jake had tried to hide, his repeated lunches with Patricia, his boss's wife, stood in his office. He tried to explain, to cover, to charm, but charm is a flimsy shield when the facts are laid bare. The office gossip network, always hungry, did what it does best. Screenshots, whispers, and rumors spread faster than he could deny. By the end of the week, his name was attached to stories online, minor at first, but enough to make potential employers hesitate. His promotion stalled, his apartment lease became a problem, and Amanda decided to leave. And suddenly, Jake was scrambling for solutions he had never needed before. No one intervened to save him. He was free-falling, entirely of his own doing. Megan Chen followed soon after, and I admit, I observed with a fascination bordering on academic. She had always thrived on attention, the carefully curated life, the likes, the sponsorships, the faux charity work, but this time her audience turned skeptical. The first red flag came from an unexpected corner, a comment buried in a local subreddit questioning the legitimacy of her fundraiser. Simple enough, public opinion moves slowly, but Megan had conditioned herself to constant validation. She couldn't ignore it. She dug, she double-checked, she panicked. Then she posted stories, explanations, reassurances. But the internet rarely forgives when things don't add up. Followers began leaving, sponsors reconsidered partnerships, and her flawless facade started to crumble. She called me one night, desperate, her voice tight with fear. I listened. I offered no solutions. Not my problem, I reminded myself. All I did was acknowledge her panic, and in doing so, I let the weight of reality do the work. By the time she figured out how far-reaching the damage was, it was too late to reverse. Sarah Williams was a study in quiet collapse. Intellectual arrogance, so carefully honed over years of academic work, doesn't provide immunity from scrutiny. Her PhD, her prized achievement, became the vehicle of her undoing. I found records, old emails, cached web pages, remnants of papers, and I didn't need to manipulate them, only point them in the right direction. When her advisor requested additional sources, her confidence faltered. Weeks of preparation, years of work, and suddenly her defense was postponed indefinitely. She tried to argue, to justify, to maintain control, but once someone exposes cracks in your foundation, the structures built on pride begin to collapse. Her teaching position became tenuous, her credibility questioned, and the calm, analytical woman who once dissected friends over beers now felt the cold sting of scrutiny on herself. She realized that intellect alone doesn't shield you from consequences. Ethics and honesty do. Tyler Brooks, the youngest, had always relied on movement, on running from responsibility. Gambling debts, flimsy excuses, and borrowed money had kept him afloat for years. But when I stopped cushioning him, the ecosystem he depended on began to tighten. Calls from people he owed money to, inquiries, unexpected visitors, all the things he had dodged for years caught up with him. Unlike Megan and Sarah, Tyler's collapse was physical, immediate. Sleep became scarce, meals irregular, the nervous glances over his shoulder, the tension in his apartment, and the ever-present fear of retribution. It was all-consuming. I offered no interference, no explanations. He had constructed his own cage, and it was closing. Throughout it all, I played the part of the supportive friend, the neutral presence. I sent messages, brought small gestures, and maintained a calm exterior. It was disarming for them. They assumed, as they had always, that kindness equaled weakness, that I would intervene, excuse, explain. But kindness, when properly applied, can be far more potent than malice when wielded with discretion. It reassured them, lulled them into the assumption that I was still the same Hannah who baked cookies, who remembered birthdays, who laughed along, and in that assumption, they underestimated me for the final time. Eventually, they began to grasp the scope of the consequences they were facing. Miscommunications turned to accusations within the group. Jake assumed Megan had tipped someone off. Megan believed Sarah was analyzing them for academic purposes. Sarah suspected Tyler. Tyler suspected everyone. And each of their suspicions intensified the chaos. Their trust in each other dissolved faster than I could have orchestrated. They had engineered my humiliation, but in that same act, they had laid the framework for their own undoing. One by one, they reached out to me, the supposed friend who had always protected them from their mistakes. Jake asked questions, seeking comfort, reassurance, clarity. Megan begged, Sarah analyzed, Tyler flailed. I answered, always calm, always neutral. I never offered solutions. I didn't need to. Their own guilt and paranoia did the work. By keeping my interventions minimal, measured, and legally unassailable, I allowed the dominoes to fall on their own weight. 6 weeks after that fateful night, I orchestrated what appeared to be a simple reunion, a dinner, neutral ground, expensive enough to communicate seriousness, casual enough to seem like nostalgia. They arrived, individually, transformed by stress and consequences. None of them were the people who had shaved my head in the name of a joke. They were shadows, hollowed by the weight of their own errors. They apologized, one by one, each offering words that felt rehearsed, half-formed, desperately trying to regain a sense of equilibrium. I listened, I nodded, I acknowledged, but I did not forgive. Forgiveness was a tool for someone who expected redemption. I had no intention of giving it. Instead, I spoke, calmly, deliberately. I explained that the undoing they experienced was not orchestrated by malice. It was natural consequence amplified by the very tools and systems they had relied on. Their cruelty accelerated the process, but the architecture had existed all along. I had simply ceased to intervene. They squirmed in discomfort. They wanted recognition, validation, absolution. I offered none. I had no need to. The subtle, quiet destruction had already done its work. Lives destabilized, reputations questioned, careers interrupted, and all without a word of retaliation, without a single public exposure. The law remained untouched. Their social circles remained intact in the superficial sense, but underneath, the foundations had shifted, and nothing could restore them to the complacency they had known. Weeks turned to months. I re-entered my life fully. My hair grew back, uneven and stubborn at first, then smooth and styled. My work at the nonprofit accelerated. I had stopped being the doormat, the mediator, the buffer. I became strategic, deliberate, measured. People responded to this. Leadership naturally emerged when weakness is no longer assumed. My promotion to Director of Development was no coincidence. Those who had once dismissed me as gentle, harmless, incapable of wielding influence now found themselves surprised by a calm authority they had never anticipated. The final moments of reckoning were subtle, almost imperceptible. I encountered Jake at a coffee shop. He wore a cap, eyes careful, measuring. I spoke pleasantly, observing how quickly confidence could drain when reality intrudes. Megan's social media presence, once booming, now limped along, her followers diminished, sponsorships gone. Sarah, humbled, worked in positions far removed from her once aspiring academic career. The brilliance she had relied on rendered fragile by scrutiny. Tyler had joined the army, trading fleeting freedom for structure, responsibility, and discipline, the very qualities he had ignored for years. None of them approached me again for validation. None attempted reconciliation. Their apologies remained empty, rendered irrelevant by the natural course of cause and effect. I remained above it all, not by malice, but by discipline, by patience, by the careful understanding that the sweetest form of consequence comes